Hello, welcome to my webpage on YouTube, the Gonzo Archive, where I'll be talking about my photography for the past 50 years. My name is Ephraim John Gonzalez. I'm a photographer. I've been photographing all kinds of underground cultures, forbidden events, parties, celebrities, politicians, and I'd like to give you a brief overview of many of the kinds of photos that I've taken over the years. I will be going over some of these photographs in depth in future videos, but for now, let's take a short walk. This was one of my lectures that I gave on Clinton Street at Caveat, which was a sort of a lecture wine bar in the Lower East Side. I was talking about my photography of the underground tattoo cultures in New York City, because until 1997, tattooing was illegal. 1961, they made it illegal, and all kinds of underground tattooists were all over the city. So I talked about that. Last year, I had a photograph in a show on our backs, which was at the Leslie Lohman Museum. It was curated by Alex Heller, and they used one of my photographs for a large wall mural, Little West 12th Street at night, in the meatpacking area where so much sex work went on in the 80s and 90s. And I am a licensed New York City tour guide. So if you want to have a tour of the meatpacking district, a complete lecture of the history, the clubs, the events, the people, the places, contact me and we can schedule a tour. I started photographing when I was in high school, and in 1969 I took this photograph of the TV set. This is the men on the moon, landing on the moon, Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon, and there was no VCRs, there were no media recorders. The only way you can record this event was to take a picture of it, and I did. And I moved to New York City in 1975. I began driving a taxi cab at night. I drove a checker cab out of Astoria, and I would drive up and down the streets of New York City at night, which was a fun thing to do. And I would see all kinds of interesting things. One of them would be the sex workers along the West Side Highway. And here we have one peeking out of one of the corners of the buildings along the West Side Highway. And Christopher Street all the way up to 23rd Street on the West Side Highway was their domain. You would find all kinds of transgender sex workers, young ones, old ones, working their trade on the street, trying to survive. And this is Frances, one of the most interesting of the trans sex workers. She was friendly and she loved to have her photograph taken, and you can see right behind her is the old West Side Highway still standing, and it was damaged in 1973 and they tore it down years later, but in this photograph in the early 80s it's still there. And here she is again, strutting her stuff along the West Side Highway. And this is the meatpacking district on a Sunday afternoon, the corner of 13th and Washington. You can see how old and worn the cobblestones are, and the old brick buildings, the awnings to protect the meat as it's being packed and unpacked on trucks. And this is the way the meatpacking district looked. It was quiet, no cars, or hardly any cars, on a Sunday afternoon. The old meatpacking district in the early 80s. And of course, these are the Christopher Street piers along the West Side Highway. These piers, the buildings had been torn down and they left these old platforms, and it became a haven for gay men to be cruising. This is the early 1980s, and you see two men entering the pier, and you'll notice on their hips they have all these hankies hanging out of their back pockets. That's sort of a signal, a clue, to tell you what you were into or what you were looking for as you cruised for men along the West Side Highway piers. And this is a very popular place to be. At night, this is the meatpacking district at night. As you can see, there are no cars, the streets are abandoned. It was like being on the set of The Walking Dead. It was like when you're here, you're in a separate world. And this is 13th Street in the meatpacking district, looking towards the High Line. And here we have our naked civil servant, Quentin Crisp, and the 1983 Gay Pride March. He's being driven around. At this time, the march started in Greenwich Village and went all the way uptown to Central Park. Years later, they would reverse the flow. But in this time, the marches started in Greenwich Village. And right behind Quentin Crisp, you'll see the big sign that says, Bagels and. Well, what that is the original Stonewall Inn. That's where the riot occurred in 1969. And because of market forces, they had to shut down, and they were reopened as a bagel store. It is now, once again, the Stonewall Inn. It is famous, it is popular. They're trying to turn it into a national monument, which it should be. And this is Quentin Crisp in Sheridan Square. Now, these were young gay kids, trans kids, along the West Side highways, just hanging out, having fun, strutting their stuff. What was wonderful about the West Side Highway at night is you could be as fabulous as you wanted to be and nobody would say boo to you. This was a place where you could be gay, you could be trans, and you could be happy all at the same time. And 1983, Gay Pride, Greenwich Village. These are the old abandoned piers, and you notice you could find love on the abandoned piers. You have two men finding love amongst the rusting, disintegrating buildings along the piers, and it was a nice place to hang out on a Sunday afternoon. You could sit there, listen to the water lap along the barges, talk with your friends, and just enjoy a wonderful Sunday afternoon. And you'll notice in the distance, the buildings are still standing, but they're disintegrating. But in these disintegrating buildings, you will see that things still happen. Here we have two men making love on the second floor of the old abandoned piers along the West Side Highway and Christopher Street. And these would be shortly torn down, but while they stood, they were a main cruising ground for gay men, especially at night when they would go in there at night to find true love. And just before they tore down the piers, I went in there on a Sunday afternoon with color film and photographed the interior so that you could see. Imagine walking through this at night, no lights, trying to find someone friendly. Now, another thing I photographed would be the Tattoo Society of New York City. Because tattooing was illegal, they decided to have a tattoo society, so all the tattooists, underground and otherwise, would be able to gather and schmooze and say hello to one another and ply their trade. And this was taken in the East Village. And you would have Spiderweb, J.C. Fly, other famous tattooists would come by, give a lecture, do a demo. You couldn't do the tattoos, but you could talk about it. And you could also show your ink work that you had done on your body at the Sixth Sense Art Gallery between Avenue A and B. And shortly after 1997, the city legalized tattooing, so you had the tattoo convention at Roseland Ballroom in the late 90s up until the 2000s. And here we have John Cobb, a very famous body modifier. He's famed for his work in doing all kinds of unique, difficult, and original piercing work. John Cobb at the Roseland Ballroom. And this is a bisexual poetry group, Dark Star Poetry Group, at PS 122 on 10th Street in the East Village on 1st Avenue. This was an old school building which has, in time, been converted into an art performance space. And this was in the mid-80s. A bisexual poetry group was doing a performance there, and they hired me to come by and photograph them as promotional photographs. So this is the Dark Star by Poetry people, New York City, East Village. And of course, La Escuelita on 39th Street, which was a fabulous place, 39th and 8th Avenue. This was around the 1990s, and this was Latina Night at Escuelita. You'd have all the drag performers on stage doing their stuff. And another fabulous place was the pool at Cave Cavam. Cave Cavam was a fetish restaurant located on 24 First Avenue around 2nd Street in the East Village. It was originally a Jewish steam bath. That's why he had the pool in the basement. And then it was in the 70s it became Club Baths, a gay bathhouse. Then in the 80s it was bought by Haith Sutton, and she turned it into Cave Cavam, a restaurant. And it lasted for a while, but recently the building has been torn down. All this is gone. Some fabulous parties there in Cave Cavam, 1st Avenue, East Village. Those were the Sirens having a splash party at Cave Cavam, 1983. This is in the late 90s. This is Hillary Clinton at the moment of silence at the Gay Pride March. As any good politician, she showed up trying to get a few votes. This is when she was running for various offices in New York State. And Mayor David Dinkins at the Gay Community Center. He was the first mayor to visit the Gay Community Center. And this was shortly after his inauguration. He came to the center, spoke directly to the community on the 3rd floor space, and he then had people lined up and would answer their questions. If they had problems, they wanted to speak directly to the mayor. That was Mayor David Dinkins. And 2 fellow artists, Candida Royale, porn star, filmmaker, and Charles Gatewood, photographer, archivist, writer, and they have been since both passed away. Very sad, but they were wonderful friends of mine. Candida Royale used to be my neighbor. She used to live on Sackett Street, just down the block. And this was Mother, one of the most famous clubs in the meatpacking district. This was Mother, located on the corner of Washington and 14th Street. And it was an all-around fetish club, bar, performance space, a little bit of everything. If you can name a fetish, they had something going on there one night or another. On Friday nights, Julie Tolentino would have the Clit Club lesbian parties at Mother. And the doorman for the hour, what you see here, is Father Vincent, one of the members of the Vampire Societies of New York. And this was the club, Mother, where they would have Jackie 60 on certain nights. And here we have on the inside one of the trans performers wearing a full layer of glitter in the bathroom of Mother. And other people wearing their magnificent corsets and designs at Mother on 14th Street. And this is Wigstock, which was a fabulous trans music party in Thompson Square Park on Labor Day. This is Annie Sprinkle attending the event in the late 90s. It was just a lot of fun, put on by Lady Bunny. And here we have Venus de Mars, glam punk rock and roll artist. I've seen her shows. I love this woman. She's fantastic. I hope she comes back to New York City. I want to catch more of her shows. This is her at Meow Mix, which is a little itty bitty lesbian bar on Suffolk and Hudson Street in the Lower East Side. Fortunately, it is gone. Sad to say, we've lost another bar. But here we have Venus de Mars again. I believe this was at Limelight. This was at Limelight, New York City. And here we have my friend Victoria Wolf posing on a pool table at The Vault. The Vault was a building that stood on the corner of 13th Street and 10th Avenue, and it was originally a 4-story refrigeration building. And I know it was a refrigeration building because they still had the refrigeration radiators on the floors above. They would pump saltwater brine through these radiators to about 5 degrees below zero, and that would freeze everything solid. And the walls in this building were very, very thick for insulation. And here is Victoria Wolf, all tied up on the ground floor of the Vault. This is the ballroom space. And as you can see, there are many playstations all over the place. You could be tied up, you could be paddled, you could be in a sling, or you can just sit at the bar and have a soda at the Vault on 13th Street, 10th Avenue. This is a photo shoot I did for the Drag Kings in the East Village. The gentleman in the center is Moby Dick, Drag King extraordinaire, and she worked to put together this whole collection of drag kings, basically young women who wanted to dress up in male drag and just act like Donald Trump, spit on the floor, annoy women, blah, blah, blah. And this was a fabulous shoot at Cake, which was located on Avenue B in the East Village. They performed at many other bars and clubs in the city. They would get up on stage and sing and dance and act as men. And this was the Drag Kings. I'll be doing another video on this in the future. Here we have Susan Wright with the safe, sane, and consensual flag at Paddles, located on 21st Street, 10th Avenue. Paddles was a fetish bar, an S&M bar, located in Chelsea, 21st Street. And it is still going strong, although in a different location on 26th Street. And again, Gay Pride, 1998. Here we have this young lady showing her pride, showing her flag, showing her beauty at the Gay Pride March in the courtyard of the Gay Community Center on 13th Street. Yeah, I met her on the streets, and she had a flag, and we began taking pictures, and one thing led to another, and I got this beautiful photograph of her. Now, this is from Night of a Thousand Scars. This was for the movie Strangeland. Dee Snider, the musician, did a movie called Strangeland about a serial killer who does mutilation, body piercing, tattooing, all kinds of torture, and this was the opening for the movie that he did, Strangeland, at Webster Hall in 1998. And this gentleman was one of the performers doing all kinds of body mod stuff on the balcony floor of Webster Hall. And at Webster Hall for that event, Strangeland, was Danny the Wonder Pony. Here we have Danny on stage giving a young lady a pony ride. Now what Danny did was he went out and had a saddle specially designed for his back so that it would fit him perfectly. And what he would do is he would just offer people pony rides, especially young ladies. They would sit on his back and he would walk around with them on his back. And you can see that he has a perfectly designed saddle mounted onto his back. And a party wasn't a party unless Danny the Wonder Pony showed up. So you would see him at various places in the East Village, at the Limelight, bars, parties here and there. He was all over the place, and he was a lot of fun. This is the Meatpacking District around 2009. This is when it began really going full glam. This shows the Meatpacking District full of cars, full of pedestrians, full of life. Had this photograph been taken 10 years earlier, the streets would have been deserted. There would be very few people walking. And right over here is the Triangle Building, the famous Triangle Building. And right down over here is the original entrance to the Hellfire Club. Hellfire Club was one of the most famous S&M fetish sex clubs in the city. It went through various incarnations, and in the early 80s, you'd be able to walk down a staircase right over here. There'd be a staircase. You'd walk down underground, turn right under the street, and you would end up in a giant vault, an old Civil War vault under the streets of 9th Avenue. And that's where you had the Hellfire Club. It went through various incarnations, various changes, and we'll be doing another video about that in the future, the Hellfire Club. And located in the building where I took that picture, this was the Body Archive. This was the garage located on 9th Avenue and 12th Street. There was a large parking garage. It had several floors. This was the second floor. And they had a teeny tiny little office. And this is Maddie Jankowski, who ran the Body Archive, which was a tattoo archive. It was an archive of anything associated with tattooing: cartoons, toys, books, paraphernalia, postcards, literature, anything that he could collect on tattooing, he would have there in his tiny little space. You can see all the books and the paperwork and the posters and the artwork. This is Manny Jankowski. He has since passed away. We've lost this gentleman. But hopefully all of his work survives. This is Manny Jankowski. And across the street, by the way, you can see the Gansevoort Hotel being built. And this was Lenny Waller, who ran the Hellfire Club. Here he is at the Gay Pride March. He passed away a few years ago. And I hope to be doing another video on his life, his times, and his contribution to the fetish societies and cultures of New York City. He was a remarkable gentleman, kind, generous, a community leader, and unfortunately he died of a heart attack a few years ago. Before he died, he came to me because he wanted to give me the oral history of the Hellfire Club, and that is going to make a fantastic video in the future. And another thing I'd love going to is the Lambda Literary Awards. Here we are at Cooper Union, and there's Kate Millett receiving her Pioneer Award at the Lambda Literary Awards. And this, again, 2015 Lambda Literary Awards, and there is John Waters giving a speech to the people in the audience at the Lincoln Room, the Lincoln Auditorium at Cooper Union in the East Village. And here I am in the Executive Building at the Obama White House, Washington, D.C., 2016. This was for the bisexual community briefing being held at the Executive Building under the Obama administration. And this was fabulous. We had bisexual communities, transgender people. We had all kinds of gendered, queer, bi, trans, you name it, we had it there, as long as it was bisexual. And we were celebrated. We were given our moment in the White House. This whole affair was broadcast through the White House. And shortly afterwards, some other guy, I forget his name, became president, and it all went down the drain. But hopefully, we shall be back. We shall be back. And this was my moment in the sun. This is the Susan Ramirez does a rendition of Over the Rainbow at the World Pride 2019 opening at Barclays Center, June 2019. This was during Gay Pride, or rather World Pride Week. They were having a huge opening party at Barclays Center, and I was one of the people celebrated on stage. There I am on the far right. I had my 10 seconds of fame. They panned a camera on me and broadcast my face all over the world. I was celebrated for my documentary photography of the bisexual community and queer culture and everything. And you had a lot of other leaders, activists, bisexual people, all up and down the stage from all over the country, being given their 10 seconds of fame at World Pride at Barclays Center. That was truly a wonderful event. And here we have Amanda Lepore. She was being interviewed at Leslie Lohman Museum on Wooster Street in Soho, and she was basically given a lecture about her life, how she started as a young boy and transformed herself into Amanda Lepore, and the world's most expensive woman, and how she's still going strong, still performing arts, still being very creative. Well, I hope you enjoyed my photography. I've covered a lot of subjects, and I hope to cover a lot more in the future. I hope to be able to do more videos of specific subjects, specific people, specific events. And if you have a question, or if you have a particular event that you would like to cover, please contact me, and I'll see what we can do. But I thank you for coming to my webpage, the Gonzo Archive, and I hope to be filling this up with lots of videos of my photography. Thank you very much.